This is the recording of my Zoom call from June 30th, 2023. I hosted this call with Ryan Lundquist. Ryan is a real estate appraiser and housing analyst from Sacramento, California, and we really focused on data from our local market here to recap the first half of the year. So let's get into it. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And Ryan, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to join us on this Friday morning. I really appreciate you. If anyone has not heard of Ryan, this is Ryan Lundquist. He is a residential appraiser and housing analyst here in Sacramento. Really, I mean, you're a blessing to the community, Ryan. It's super great to see you talk in person. I always do that whenever I get the chance. You draw a tremendous crowd because of the value that you offer. And you have a really good presentation. I like how you keep the humor light and everything like that. So thank you for joining us.
No, absolutely. I'm excited to be here. I feel weird just being the only guy on the screen, but let's dive in and let's talk some shop and maybe field some questions, and really grateful for the time we have today. So thanks everyone for being here.
We might have a couple minutes towards the end for a Q&A. I mean, this is a short call. We're going to run about 30 minutes. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And yeah, going back to talking about Ryan speaking, guys, we love to see Ryan speak. We love the information that he offers us and the things that he shares with us about our market. I encourage you to visit his blog, sacramentoappraisalblog.com. It's super important that we're acting as true professionals. We need to be masters of our crafts because our clients and the community outside of real estate, they're also hungry for this information. So just like we love to hear Ryan speak and love all the offerings that he has, our clients need this as well. So make sure you're keeping people in the loop. I know it's been kind of a wild ride so far this year, but you know, just offering the information from an unbiased standpoint. I love that you just speak to the numbers, right? It's all about the numbers. It's not going to always be the right time for somebody to buy a house. It's not going to be the right time for somebody to sell a house. So we just need to act as true professionals, offer the value, and then the business will come around. I love that about you. You know, you're all about the data. That's
For sure.
important.
For sure.
So 2023, how would you summarize things?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We have, I think everyone can kind of see a dramatic shift in this market. I think we had from last May to December 2022, it was basically one of the darkest markets we've ever had. And I think it fueled, every sort of crash narrative YouTube channel. It was like rejoicing, going, "This is wonderful, more clicks, more clicks." But really, I mean, there was profound uncertainty. And the way I'm saying it is that we went from an ice bath market to something that feels like a bloodbath. And I think what's happened in 2023, the X factor here is sellers stepping back from the market. Now, that had already started last year. Okay, when rates went up to 7%, sellers really sitting from the normal level. But what began happening in January was, something very intense. And I think at the time, some people were maybe explaining it away, going, "It's just the weather. We have a lot of rain." But it turns out that, it's not. And what's happening is, I think sellers looking at the market and going, "I can't afford a replacement home," or "I'm really enjoying that 3% mortgage rate." And so January through May, we've seen about 40% fewer new listings. And and it's this weird market where we already have a lower number of buyers. And so it feels like 2007 in that regard, but it really feels like 2020 in terms of competition now, because it's low demand and low supply meeting to duke it out. And so I think a lot of people are maybe tempted to say that, "Oh, this market's just totally normal." And I'd go, no, it's not normal. I don't think we've had a market like this before. But really the X factor is through May, missing about 5,400 listings compared to last year. Okay, from the pre-pandemic normal, missing closer to 7,500. And so it's made a massive impact. And so a lot of the stats right now are starting to be in a place where we've actually gotten more aggressive than normal in terms of the percentage of multiple offers, the speed of the market. It's sort of like a 180 from the fall when things were really, really dull, and now things feel a lot more aggressive. But it's still weird because last month was the first time, in 6 months since we got above 2007 volume levels. And so it's like we had literally our worst volume ever. And then last month going, yay, we're past that, moment. And I'm still waiting. I might be able to announce today if June volume outpaces June 2007. It's looking really, really close, and I'll have a good sense of that today. It could be slightly lower, it could be a little more, but we're still flirting with low levels, but the market feels like chaos. That's sort of how I'm looking at it. And thanks everyone for joining. I'm seeing a ton of people join. Thanks so much.
That's interesting because the issue in 2007, I was reviewing some of your other slides, and I mean, it was a different issue back then, right? Supply was not the issue, but volume was the same, which I thought was interesting. Gosh, I think just going off memory, I think we had a 10 over 10-month supply
Yeah.
back in 2007, and now
Yeah,
we're at about 1 month, if I remember correctly.
exactly. And so I think when people compare this market to 2007, it's like the number of sales feels very similar,
Mhm.
but the dynamic is completely different. It's hard to even imagine 10 months of housing supply. When things got really bad back in those days, we got up to about 13 to 14 months. That was sort of the worst. But really, we've been flirting with about 1 month. I don't know if anyone's noticed lately, but I will say that the number of listings has increased a little bit more. Okay, there's about maybe 300 more listings compared to pendings. Like it's really, really low still. But have you noticed in the trenches? I'd actually love to hear in the chat like a little bit of relief, where it's like not as aggressive as it was last month. It's still really, really competitive, but there's a few more options. And I'm almost hesitant to say that because people are like, stop saying that the market's slow. That's not what I said. Okay. But what I'm noticing is that a little bit of a temperature change, which typically happens around this time of year. I know sometimes in real estate, people don't like to talk about that. I just want to say to all my real estate friends here, though, is that here's the good news: take the pressure off yourself. Our positive mindset doesn't control the market.
Mhm.
I think sometimes in real estate we think that I've got to keep things positive because it'll affect the market. Like look, like our volume's down about 35 to 40% right now. We can't just be positive and change that. And so there's bigger forces at play. And so I just say take the pressure off. Don't even worry about that. But I have to be said, I have noticed sort of things starting to slow a little bit. The percentage of multiple offers really about 59%. That's bananas because it should be 46 to 49% at this time of year. Like it's way higher than normal, but it's down a little bit from 61, 62%, in the last couple months. And so you see this very slight change that might not even be discernible in the trenches of escrows, but I'm seeing subtle changes where there's a little bit of hope for going, okay, we went up, cresting for the year, and then the hope is to have a normal spring or normal fall season, and we'll see about that. So,
Yeah.
but
And
questions?
yeah, and normal fall season, I mean, typically the second half of the year slows a little bit. Would you say that that's accurate
Oh
seasonally?
yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And so I think sometimes in real estate we struggle to concede that there's this normal rhythm baked into the market. Like right now, it's vacation time for people. It's school's getting off. It's hot. It's going to be freaking hot today, right? And so people are going to be doing a lot of other things and not just heavily focused on real estate. And so typically we see at this time of year start to see volume peak out. We usually see prices peak in May or June, and typically they start to slide down. Oftentimes the median price for the second half of the year, it goes down sometimes 1.5%, sometimes 3%. Last year was 15%. Okay, but it's normal to sort of go up about 10% and then down about 3% or so, and each given year. But we should expect all those things. I'm starting to see more price reductions, which is normal. Okay, it's not like the price reductions last year. It's a very normal amount, but starting to see some of the subtle signs of going, okay, we're entering that season before you see it in the sales stats. Okay, we're noticing a temperature change in the market that's not going to show up in the closed sales for the next for a couple of months or so. So yeah, so we're kind of in the thick of that, and that's what we would expect. One thing that I wouldn't expect is for a really sharp downturn like we saw in 2022 this year. The
Hmm.
market dynamics totally different this year. Right now, we're starting a descent from the spring, and we're starting from a place where we're really aggressive. And last year, the market fundamentally changed. There was a lot of rate shock, and I'm not sugarcoating here. I'm just saying that it's very unlikely to see sort of that 15% price drop between
Hmm.
now and December 2023, because it's a fundamentally different dynamic, right? Unless something comes unexpected and interrupts the trend. I know some of the big news today is that Biden student loan pause is now people are going to start having to pay on their student loans, and I can almost predict that every doom and gloom YouTuber over the next couple of weeks, they're going to latch onto that idea and be like, this is going to crash the housing market. I don't know if anyone's been paying attention to Airbnb crash, or vacant
Yeah.
homes can crash the market, or like there's something new every single week that's going to, I think, affect the market. And then it doesn't happen. And so then we question, does that person have credibility or not?
Yeah, I completely agree with that. You always see the shocking headlines to get views and things like that. But that's what I love about you. You just share the facts and show what's really going on. You're not, really projecting on one thing happening to one extreme or the other. And yeah, I want to speak to the relief that you talked about in my neighborhood. So I live up in Cameron Park, and we've seen a lot more listings, coming on, a couple for sale signs in my neighborhood. Somebody's doing a rehab in my neighborhood, and so they're about to put that on the market. So we'll keep an eye on that. Real quick, because you did mention kind of the slowdown in the beginning of the year, end of 2022. I did make some notes, and I just looked at Mortgage News Daily to kind of recap what interest rates have done. I'll just drop some monthly numbers. So we started off in January, at the beginning of January, the 30-year fixed average was 6.45%. In February, we saw the low of 5.99, so 5.99%. In March, it peaked back up to 7.1%. April was down to 6.1%. May was 7.1, and today we're right at about 7%. So I agree with you as far as the slowdown for the later part of the year. This year is much, much different than last year. I think people are kind of getting used to the idea of where rates are at. We can talk about inflation and things like that, and that is something that I do watch. You wrote an article in January talking about rent prices. I think that component is really interesting, because as rents come down, if they come down, that's a big part of the CPI number, which affects inflation. So if rents stabilize, that will help interest rates come down, but I'm not counting on that. I'm not telling people to count on that. We're looking at today what we have available to us.
Yeah.
We're making sure the client understands what all the numbers are so that they can make a decision for themselves on if that's the right move or not for their family to purchase.
For sure.
Um,
And real quick, and if could I speak to rents real quick, if that's okay?
yeah, I
Um,
would love
and
that, because
and if
yeah.
and also, is it possible to enable the chat? I just don't see a group chat here. Maybe no one said anything, but I'd love to just get conversation going there if we can. That's up to you. But rents did drop last year. It's sort of like they mirrored the resale market. Okay, I was just actually
Mhm.
talking with John Tyner today. He runs Tyner Property Management. And I texted him. I'm like, hey, I'm doing a Zoom. I have some other stats. I want to hear from the boots on the ground. John has about 1,000 doors under his belt. Okay, and so there's tremendous perspective here. And here's his text. He said, when the sales market tanked last spring, lots of single family residents came on the rent market and pushed rents down about 10% by the end of 2022. We've gained about 3/4 of that back. He said days on market are now 19 days. That's how long it's taking his rentals to rent. It was 31 in January. And so it's interesting because, I look at stats for like apartment lists. They show that Sacramento's down about 3% from last year, but up about 1% over the past 6 months. And so, but it kind of, it really coincides, I think, with John's anecdotal, or I shouldn't say anecdotal, his specific stats with, his 1,000 rentals to show that, there was this real change, sharp change last year, and then this recovery. It feels like exactly what's happened with the resale market.
Mm-hmm.
Really sharp change down, and then all of a sudden you see that, oh, prices are higher again. Okay, we're about the median price for June should be down about 5% from the peak in May 2022, 5.6% maybe. Okay, and so that's
Okay.
much different than, I think that in May 2022, you got to December where you're like, oh my gosh, we're down about 15%. And so what's happened over the past 6 months? The median has gone up about 10% this spring season. Kind of a normal number, a little bit lower than normal actually. And so anyway, that's sort of what what I'm seeing there. And I know Ishmael says, are you seeing more multiples in different price points? Absolutely. The market under 500,000, particularly under 400,000, that's where it
Mm-hmm.
really gets crazy. But under 500,000, there's a lot more competition. Okay, part of that's normal. The lower the price, the less, the lower the inventory, the more competition. But so far in June, I wrote down some stats here. Under 500,000, about 65% of these closed sales sold above the original price. Okay. Now,
Wow.
above 500,000, that's more like half. And so, but you can kind of see under 500, more aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
But still, I'm also noticing though, in that it's not that 2021 dynamic where people are just coming and going, I'm going to offer 10% over market value. It's really expensive to do that today. It seems like rates have been so stubborn at 7%. It's like that extra 20 pounds that I really should be losing. It's sticking in my body. It's just, it won't go anywhere. And that's
Yeah.
a different podcast that we need to do. But it's like, as rates hover there, I think consumers have been looking and going, I can't, overpay unless you have a situation where you're priced 15% lower than value. Then yeah, properties can go all over the place. Of course they're going to go higher.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we were in that market where people were waiving contingencies, offering exorbitant price over list, um, a lot of the stronger buyers during that time, they were the ones that won, really high credit scores, a ton of money in the bank in order to waive an contingency or pay over list price. So we're dealing with a little bit of a different buyer today too. And then additionally on sales and listings, I mean, I think, and let me know if you see this in the numbers, but I feel like a lot of the sales that we're seeing are more circumstantial than somebody just saying, hey, I want to move neighborhoods or, upgrade my home. It's a little more difficult to do that with the rates where they're at. But are you seeing a lot of like divorce sales, probate sales, things like that? Because those people, sometimes they don't really have a choice but to sell, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd actually love to hear in the chat too, what are you seeing? Why are people listing? Why are people buying? And I think
Mhm.
it's a market of lifestyle. And so it's sort of like one of those things where we can look at the stats and go, man, we're missing about 5,000 sales through June. This is really sobering. Or you can look and go, there's been 8,500 sales that have happened. And so it's like you look at stats and go, which one am I going to pay attention to? I think that you need to focus on the market that is happening. But among the market that's happening, I'm hearing, some prominent themes of, a lot of it has to do with inheriting properties in estate and probate
Mhm.
stuff, death, where heirs may not be able to divide assets as easily. It's difficult to buy someone off, especially if you're getting a loan. A lot of divorce where it's more difficult to dissolve the relationship and one person keeps the house. I'm hearing a lot of that. And some buyers who, are leaving California or who are like, I want that property on acreage. And then,
Yeah.
there's some reason for them to say, I'm going to participate in the market, right? Even though, rents might actually be higher today or lower today than buying, some people are eyeing the market and going, I'm a first time buyer. I want to get in the game. And so that's
Mhm.
why we've seen a little bit of an uptick in FHA, and
Yeah.
so I think that, you look at the stats and go, these are the players. And I think, I'm looking in the chat, Melissa says moving out of state, selling
Yeah.
investment property to simplify, buying because lifestyle change or sick of landlord, which Carly says. Corey says seeing a lot of downsizing to capitalize on gains. Yeah, who's moving up? Who's moving down? Nancy says selling the family home after parents passed. I see a tremendous amount of that on the appraisal side of things. Downsizing and death, like Claudia says. And so, so again,
Mhm.
I think it's like when you think about, for my real estate friends, you think about your marketing and who you're trying to reach and telling the story of value. It's like that's the target audience. Who has incentive to buy and sell right now are people who have a lifestyle need. Okay, we can talk about price metrics until we're blue in the face, but the only thing
Yeah.
that matters is, whose life is going to intersect right now with the market, regardless of conditions. And that's really lifestyle for the win right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with that. And kind of what I mentioned in the beginning, one of the reasons that we love to watch you speak is because you're sharing this data, you're sharing the market trends. This Zoom call, I actually do it every Friday, and I try to offer as much value as I can for the agents. So I did a Zoom call last week, and I put that recording on my YouTube, and I was talking about doing an unsolicited video CMA, which I think is really interesting. There's a gentleman in Florida that started doing this, and he was just going through and giving his clients an update. He wasn't prompting them to sell, he wasn't preaching how good the market was, but he was really just offering them value and showing kind of where they stand. We had a lot of news about, when the values skyrocketed during COVID earlier this year and late last year, we had a little bit of a correction. I think things are stabilizing right now. So I really think your past clients need to hear that. So I think that's a great strategy. It looks like 11.6 sold at original list price, 37% roughly sold below original list price, 51% sold above original list price. And that's really a lot on the agent, right? How they're pricing the home, and what strategy they're using there. Here was an interesting thing from your article in January. So the median mortgage payment was $4,137, whereas the median rent was $2,695. So, like you said, there are people out there that it might be their best option to rent, and that's okay. We need to be realistic with our expectations. When I get someone and they're locked into a low rent, when they're thinking about buying a house, affordability is kind of the elephant in the room. We do have to address it, and it's not the right time for everyone. What I'll encourage those people to do is, I'll do a full payment breakdown. I use a system called Mortgage Coach that does a presentation that shows them all of the numbers, and I'll say, hey, if you're going from 2,200 in rent and you're looking about at going to a mortgage payment of 3,500, start paying 3,500 right now, put the extra money in the bank and see how that feels for your budget. At the same time, you're going to be adding money each month to your down payment. So I think that's a really good strategy and advice to give, if you're talking to people that aren't ready to buy right now, have them start to save and feel, get a feel for what that feels like
Yeah,
in their budget.
no, definitely. And I think that, I mean, obviously affordability is a massive issue today, but there are still transactions happening. I've noticed it talking with a lot of agents where, so I've heard this story countless times where it's like, man, it was really, really, thin and, the first few months of the year and things are starting to pick up. And so I think that people are really glad to see some more listings. But I think
Yeah.
it's a market like today that just reminds us of how important the network is and building relationships with people. And so there's market statistics, and we want to be experts in that. But it's
Mhm.
like in a market like today, there are naturally going to be more people saying no than yes because affordability. And I see, and I sorry to mention this, I'm not trying to target anyone, but I see online there's a lot of agents across the country who are talking about, like, it's almost like a consumer slap in the face, maybe meant as a joke, but it says that consumers are willing to pay 18% on a credit card, but then you won't pay 7% on a house. But the irony is that, like, I'm not sure that's the best way to win business, but the irony is that when I speak to rooms full of real estate people and I ask who's going to sell your house this year, who's going to buy, very few hands go up. And so
Yeah.
it's not just something that, like, consumers out there are struggling with. It's everyone who works in real estate where you're going, the numbers are hard right now. And so that's why
Mhm.
I continue to say, increase your network. What do you need to do right now to increase the size of your network? Because if you're going to get more no's, your network has to be larger in order to get yeses. And so that's why I really love the examples of people who are keeping it personable, who are playing pickleball with others, who are taking walks, who are, doing a good job just supporting the community and, being out there or doing Zoom calls like this, adding value to people's lives and being a resource. And so I just wanted to mention that in passing. And again, not trying to be a douchebag with that, mentioning that, meme that's going around, but I just feel like
Yeah.
we can do so much better. We can add more value. We can serve people, and that's just really attractive. I will say I know this isn't a marketing call, but I had a friend who worked he ran an enterprise used car business in Sacramento, and he had the number two agent in his company in the United States, the number two salesperson. And it was interesting because this guy was retired and he didn't need the job, and that's what made him successful, because he didn't put any pressure on people. He was like, hey,
Right.
here are the facts, and just kind of look at what you said, here's what the mortgage costs, and let people decide. And it was a killer tactic because it wasn't sort of that literally used car salesman vibe where someone's trying to get something, I got to close the deal. And I just think that service and providing facts was just so powerful. So if Claudia asks, what are you doing with ADUs? That's a big baby to give birth to. Maybe I can post in the chat an article about ADUs, because I think that we can, get sidetracked there. But I'm going to post in the chat right now an article
Yeah,
I wrote about ADUs, because we can go on for a long time about that.
yeah, that would be great. And we're pretty much at time here. As far as that, the meme, um, what I'm telling people, I've spoken to numerous people this year that have thought about selling, looking to buy something else. They have one reason or the other. What I'm encouraging my agents to do is, it's really important. So my number one job is to put somebody in a house that they love and make sure that they're financially stable. So I'm invested in that person's financial success. So if somebody comes and they're thinking about listing, I'm really digging deep on what their other consumer debt looks like. The average car payment in America right now is $800 a month. 40% of people have a payment that's over $1,000 a month. So if they can consolidate high credit card stuff, if they can get rid of a car payment and kind of save their net expenditure by getting into a house that's going to have a higher interest rate. I know everybody loves the 3% rate, but there are opportunities to help people on their big financial picture in that way as well. So for sellers, I encourage you to talk to them about their other debts and what they might be able to consolidate if they really want to move up to save their net.
Yeah. And if I could say too, I always have something to say. So sorry, sorry everyone, but
No, that's what you're here
there's
for.
um the question of where do you want to be in life is just a powerful question. And and when I think from being in a sales position is like, how can I partner with you to meet your goals? Where it's almost like backing off some of the traditional narratives that have been
Hmm.
shared through the years about like it's so much more affordable to buy a home than rent. Like that's not true right now, but
Yep.
that doesn't mean that it's not going to be meaningful for someone's lifestyle. We don't have to convince anyone of anyone, just partner with their life. And so I just think a focus on that question is so powerful today.
For everybody on the call that don't know me, this is a Zoom call that I do every Friday. I try to bring something of value. I'm typically not giving like an interest rate update or things like that. I put the recordings on my YouTube channel. There's a bunch of stuff there. Like I said, doing the video CMA, and I did a whole presentation on how to generate more listings. And really, it's about being impactful and trying to give back to the community, right? If we're doing good things for the community, good things come around.
There's a good question. Are rates going to come down, Ben?
Let me get my crystal ball. I'm not going to say date the rate, I promise.
Thank you.
I'll say this: mortgage rates follow inflation. Some of the pain that we're feeling in mortgage rates is due to inflation. And additionally, a 30-year mortgage is one of the best hedges against inflation that you can get, because you're locking in your rate for 30 years. So as everything else goes up, your cost basis for that mortgage stays solid. There was a lot of people expecting a dip in mortgage rates come May, and it was in part by that shelter cost coming down. And it didn't happen the way a lot of people thought it was. Man, if I could say rates were going to come down with confidence and share that message, I would love to. I think we can expect rates between 6 and 7% like we've seen this year for the foreseeable future. When the inflation numbers come out, if they do start to decline, we might see some interest rates decline, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you they're going to be 4.5 in 12 months. It's possible, but I wouldn't count on it. And I really serve my clients in the way that I'm sharing the facts. I'm not trying to sway them one way or the other. I'll share the benefits. I'll let them know what's going on in the market. I have used, permanent interest rate buy downs, 2-1 interest rate buy downs. A lot of my clients in December through March did a 2-1 buy down, but they understood the reality of the rates not dropping and them having the higher rate once it adjusts up, right?
Definitely. And what does Melissa say? I found that it's volatility of rates that prevents buyers from buying rather than the actual rates themselves. Yeah. And, Melissa, I don't know if you listened to Altos research. Mike Simonson was echoing a similar sentiment. And I think that's something worth considering. Yeah, it's tough. I'm a big fan of affordability, and the way to get volume back in our market is to see affordability increase through through rate declines, price declines, or different financing programs, or some other mechanism that hasn't been invented yet. And so I think a lot of times in real estate, we play on team price, where it's all about, well, what our prices are doing. And I'm like, no, it is about being on team volume. How do we get volume back into the marketplace? We get more buyers to participate in the market by rates, or by affordability increasing. I think the problem right now is that it feels like a very broken housing market. The Fed has really, we're living in the consequences of Fed policy, where sellers are sitting because they have that really low rate or they're struggling to afford. Buyers are sitting because they're like, I can't afford. And so it feels like a market that's not your traditional supply and demand situation like we learned in economics class in 12th grade. It's like there's bigger forces at play, and Fed policy, here we are. And so those rates felt awesome at the time, not such an awesome effect at the moment. And so I think one of the things that we need to see is, sellers coming out of the woodworks to list their homes, and it'll be lifestyle that's motivating people. But really what sellers need, just like buyers, is affordability. More sellers will list their homes if they have options in the resale market to afford those properties. Okay. And so something to watch. It feels like it's artificially manipulated. I totally agree. It doesn't feel like a natural market. I think there was actually hope. I started to get a lot of emails the last quarter of 2022 in saying, I'm following your stats. I'm actually starting to feel hopeful, like I can afford the market. Haven't got any of those emails for 2 quarters now, because what happens when prices were screaming down and then all of a sudden sellers pull back, it's changed that dynamic. Okay. And so
Yeah.
if we had a normal number of listings right now, we would not be experiencing this dynamic market. And so it's unfortunately, it makes me frustrated with Fed policy, but it is what it is. We can't control that. Ishmael says, with Sacramento County being so, I think micro is what you would say. Do you see values of homes getting hit harder in some neighborhoods than others? Which areas are you seeing going crazy, and vice versa? So the market's not the same in every single price range. It's
Mhm.
always it's sort of like you can have an aggressive escrow in any price range if you price 20% below value. I'll say that first. But what
Yep.
I've noticed over the past year is that what's happened is that affordability has been a struggle. And what we've seen is that higher prices have basically pushed down, and it's pushed buyers into shopping at lower prices. And
Yeah.
so it feels really squeezed under the median price. Right now, the median price in the region is 590,000.
Wow.
Surprisingly, it's up that high again, right?
Yeah,
Um,
that's higher than I would have thought.
yeah, yeah. And now in Sacramento County, that's more like 530, 535, but it's
Yeah.
just the numbers are like our peak was 625,000. And so you're like,
Yeah.
wait, what? And so, like I said, we're about 5% or so from that. But I'd say, so what's happening though is at the bottom half of the market, that's where the most buyers are competing. And so it's in those price
Yeah.
ranges where the highest percentage of multiple offers, where it really does feel like a bloodbath. And so, but technically you can look at stats and be like, on average, properties sold about 1% below the original list price last month, but that's the average for everything. And
Yeah.
someone who's only working below 500,000 is like, yeah, on average, we're going a few percent above the original list price. And so,
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, first time home buyers, I have a decent amount of people pre-approved under 500, and we're putting our best foot forward and making the effort that we can to make those offers as strong as possible, 15-day closes. But there are people waiving contingencies out there, and I'm not a huge fan of that, especially for a first time home buyer. I really want to make sure those people know what they're getting into. So,
yeah, yeah.
um,
And hey,
you
Ben, I
know,
know you got to shut this off, but I could say, can we just talk about new construction real quick, though? My word,
I would love that.
in the chat, who is working with new construction? Because what's happening in the marketplace right now is that this is happening nationally and locally. We're seeing new construction as a greater percentage of the total market. Okay.
Mhm.
And I have a lot of really cool stats that I've been pushing out, some really robust visuals, but you can see 30% of sales last month in May anyway, were in Roseville of brand new homes. And so I think it was
Wow.
about 10% in Elk Grove, maybe 12% in Folsom. And so you kind of want to watch like, where are homes being built? That's a clue into where to focus business. But it's about it's like we have our resale market, and so far in 2023 we have X amount of sales, and then there's about 25 to 30% more new construction. Now, normally new construction isn't closer to 30% more of the resale market. Okay. I don't have an exact number to give you, but it's going to usually about 20, maybe 15%. And so it's, I'll push out some stats soon about that, but it's been a lot larger percentage, and it's concessions. It's builders who are offering incentives.
Yep.
Builders nationally have been building slightly smaller homes and able to, help consumers also. I don't have stats on that locally, but I would say that this is absolutely a robust market. Nationally, stats from John Burns Real Estate Consulting, they have the coolest surveys with new construction. If you're not following Rick Palacios Jr. on Twitter, please follow him. He's a good follow. But I think one of the things that he pushed out recently was that typically in their survey of all builders nationally, you see what buyers start to do. They start looking in the resale market, And then sometimes they end up in new construction when there's a lack of options. And so that's one of the reasons why we've seen a builder rebound now for 4 months in a row in the data, which is crazy because the resale market has seen the exact opposite. And so it just goes to show, it's sort of like back to that question that Ishmael asked, are there different sub-markets that are doing better? And I would say the new homes market feels vibrant and hot, really because of concessions. Okay, let's be honest.
Mhm.
But we're not experiencing that same dynamic in the resale market. So it's just a good reminder that how is the market doing? Well, it depends on what we're looking at, And so, but yeah, definitely keep that in mind for volume. And again, I have some awesome visuals. In fact, I'm going to put a link in the chat, and I want you to feel free to use these visuals anytime. If, for those that are still on the call, thank you so much. Use them in your reels. I have a really cool visual that I'm going to push out tomorrow to show the number of new listings, January through June. And, we'll see if we're exactly 40% down still for June when we include that. But I want you to use that and tell the story of the market. I'll push that out tomorrow morning.
Mhm.
It's my favorite visual right now that I'm sharing, but it's almost like it's that tractor beam for sellers to go, hey, if the numbers make sense, you have a captive audience. Okay.
Mhm.
If you list your home for a reasonable price, you can get it done. And then the wild part is that you start to look at numbers, and then in June of this year, you look at price figures, and then we're down 3% from last June. Okay. Down about
Right.
5% from the peak, but you start to look and go, man, we went so far down and then now we're up. And so that's where I want you to talk about math with your client base. And,
Mhm.
I think about this one guy who I talked to on Twitter last year who, was struggling, with his mental health and suicidal thoughts. And I tried to help him. Okay. And he's still around, thankfully, but he took it so hard that his home value, just plummeted. And then now,
Wow.
ironically, you can look and go like, bro, you're probably 5% down from the peak, or maybe
Right.
he's back to where he was if he bought, earlier. And so this doesn't even matter for life. Like his life shouldn't be based on that. But I'm saying that we're coming to a place where I think, you can look at prices, and there could be some sellers, if they have a replacement home, if they can exit to something
Mhm.
else, the numbers might actually work for them. Okay. If they have an exit plan. And so, that's, which is the struggle. But anyway, I
Yeah.
hope that's helpful.
Yeah, that's very helpful. I appreciate you sharing that. Going back to what I was talking about for sellers, if you're just looking at a house at 3% versus a house at 6 or 7%, they don't want anything to do with it. But if you consider the other benefits of them moving and the other debts that they have, with the possibility to consolidate with some of the proceeds of their sale, I think that's where you're going to kind of close the gap of, yeah, your payment's going to be a little bit more, or probably a lot more. But if we can eliminate these other debts, your net monthly spending could not be affected that much. And thank you for sharing that about the new construction. That's really interesting. Historically, when I'm helping clients and we're looking at new construction, oftentimes you have Mello-Roos, they're going to, expect a supplemental tax bill and HOAs. So typically, I mean, a new construction home is going to be more expensive from a resale home at that same price point. But I think you nailed it on the head when you talked about the builder's concessions. So essentially, the builder can kind of subsidize the interest rate and the mortgage through the profit on the home. And that's where they're offering these big concessions to buy down rates and things like that. So,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. Feels really manipulated, kind of like Melissa
yeah,
said, but that's what they can do. That's why they're doing well, because they
yeah.
because they can.
Make sure you check out Ryan's blog, sacramentoappraisalblog.com. Use those visuals, educate yourself, become an expert so that we can really serve our community and support each other as well. So thanks so much, man. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday and have a happy 4th, everyone.
Thanks, Ben. Remember, don't lose any fingers on the fourth. So thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my halftime report with Ryan Lundquist. If you found this video helpful or if you learned anything, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know what types of videos you'd like to see in the future. I want to keep producing videos like this to offer you information about the housing market.